Welcome to Ready Set Solar for Nonprofits, and welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Orlando. Joan Nelson, our president, who is here, and Reverend Margalie Belizaire deserves our thanks for enabling our use of this facility. Our tech team in the back, we should really thank for doing this service and the morning service also, and this workshop now. FYI, bathrooms are through that door and down the hall to the left, and the glass door is open, and there's an emergency door in the back there. For those of you who have hearing aids with T-coil, most of the seats in the sanctuary here, you can use your T-coil. The flaming chalice stained glass window in our sanctuary has roots that have been etched with the names of many of the great world religions, signifying the importance of knowledge that we can draw from many faiths. That's the background for our participation in the Interfaith Environmental Alliance of Central Florida. If I can be so bold as to say everybody, or at least most, are in awe of the Earth's majesty and are working towards a more sustainable planet for future generations. The planning team for the Interfaith Environmental Alliance is Rabbi David Kay, Pastor Sarah Robinson, Megan Collins, Mary DuBois, Amina Hamadullah, Sohaila Mohammadin, and Arvinder Sodhi, and myself, Michael Cohen. This is the 5th event we've held, and if you're here today in person and want more information, talk to one of us after the workshop. Solar United Neighbors got its start right here in May of 2015. After Mary had a driveway moment with NPR with a story about Anya Schoolman in DC starting a nonprofit that helped homeowners and small business go solar, forming solar co-ops. This provided education and group buying power. Mary and a group of us did 2 co-ops here in Orlando. Then the League of Women Voters helped us raise money for staff, and we became part of what is today's Sun. Today, we are proud to say we are on our 81st co-op and have helped over 2,400 homeowners go solar. These homeowners got tax credits of up to 30%, which helped lower the cost of buying solar. Nonprofits like this church, or public schools, or private schools, or large social service organizations that don't pay taxes pay the full price of solar. The Inflation Reduction Act that passed last summer changes how nonprofits are treated when purchasing photovoltaic solar and adding energy efficiency to their buildings. I don't know a nonprofit that would turn down money to support their mission versus paying an electric bill. Our speaker today will tell you about how efficiency and solar can create an endowment that pays benefits every month. Heaven Campbell is the state Florida director for Sun, a 501c3 nonprofit. She will talk about solar and nonprofits, and she will also talk about the IRA and the benefits that are generated by that. Those who are online can put their questions in the Q&A, and those who are in person can ask questions at the end, and we'll recap as many questions as we can until 5 o'clock. Now I'll turn this over to Heaven.
good afternoon. Thanks, Michael. So as Michael said, we're here today to talk about how nonprofits can take advantage of tax incentives to go solar that were previously unavailable. I'm with Solar United Neighbors. I'm the Florida Program Director. We're a vendor-neutral national 501c3. We focus on helping people go solar because it's a part of our theory of change, that whenever you go solar, then you're joining together with this broader solar community and helping to enact change. You have skin in the game, if you will. And we call that fight for our energy rights. We believe that the future of our energy system is a democratic system. This is a theory that we call energy democracy, and we believe everyone should have a stake in how our energy is made and utilized, and get a piece of those savings. Our national impact, we've helped almost 8,000 families go solar directly through our programming, several times more than that outside of our programming. This looks like about 68 megawatts of solar distributed, so spread out across schools, homeowners, small businesses, and we've offset a lot of metric tons in the process. So I'm going to talk briefly about some solar basics just to make sure we all are operating from the same basic knowledge, and then talk more about these exciting changes that happened under the Inflation Reduction Act. Whenever we talk about solar, we're talking about solar PV or solar photovoltaic. Being here in Florida, a lot of us are familiar with the meshy type of solar, that is solar thermal, used to warm up pools, completely different technology. So we're talking about these glass panels. Michael's passing one around right now, and that's a simple technology, no moving parts, that converts photons from the sun into electricity. A solar system is made up of three main parts. The panel, which is heavy duty, tested and rated for snow, hail, hurricane force winds, down pressure, and uplift. And those panels come together, sometimes called modules, to make a solar system or a solar array. And again, the panels have no moving parts. And then the panels are attached to your roof, or a ground mount perhaps, with racking. A racking system can be made for any type of roof material. Most often we have asphalt shingle roofs, and this uses a weatherproofing methodology called flashing, and then also we'll have other sealants involved, maybe an O-ring or some foam sealant. And this is really a technology that's already on our roofs. Most of us have a satellite dish or an attic fan, or some type of situation already on our roof that requires flashing, so this is using tried and true weatherproofing methodology. And the racking system itself is also rated for different down pressure and uplift, and depending on your local building department, the codes that they require, and then the state code as well, and wind code based on where you are in the state. So the panels and the racking are tested and rated and have different certifications that they come with. And then the whole engineering of the system and how it fits together, where it is on your roof, is also approved by your local building and permitting department, and will get a professional engineer stamp on that setup. So the last part of your system is an inverter. And this is what takes the raw electricity that your panels produce. Again, no moving parts, really simple technology. The silicon in the panels gets excited from photons from the sun, and electrons get super excited and make raw electricity. That needs to be converted to alternating current electricity, which is what our homes run on. So you need an inverter to do that. You might have a micro inverter that's about the size of an iPhone on your panel, on the panel level, or for larger projects, which most nonprofits are going to be a larger project, you'll probably have a string inverter. And that's about the size of a speaker box, and that's going to be near your main panel or your electrical meter, so maybe on the side of your building or inside a garage type situation. So string inverters are the more common setup for larger systems. Solar connects into your electrical panel pretty simply. It just ties right in. However, we're talking about larger systems here in most cases for nonprofits or houses of worship because we use a lot more electricity. So you may need an additional panel or more room in your panel. You might need to be brought up to code if it's been a while since the electrical has been updated or the building is maybe pre-1980. And if you have a three-phase system, so a large commercial system, then you might require an engineering study just to make sure that everything is, now that you're going to be an energy producer, everything is connecting back into the utility in a way that they are knowledgeable about and can manage that backflow of electricity. So nothing crazy, but it does require more for what we would call commercial size projects. It's really important to understand if you are going to be a good fit for solar. And that really comes down to your roof or the space that you're thinking about putting maybe a ground mount. And that is going to be pretty much the same for both ground mount and roof. You want to be facing south. East and west can also work. If you have a flat roof, many commercial buildings do have a flat roof. North can sometimes work, depending on what kind of pitch you can get with your local wind code requirements. But really, south is the best. And then whether it's on your roof or a ground mount situation, you want very little or no shading. This is not a thermal technology. It's not based on heat. It's based on direct exposure to the sun's rays. So very little or no shading. And then space. You want to make sure that you have uninterrupted roof space. So a large plane that doesn't have any decorative objects or chimneys. And the same for a ground mount. You want to have, a good amount of space to build out the structure that will hold those panels and have some buffer area around them. So some important terminology for us, whenever we talk about a solar system, it can also be called a solar array. And then that solar system just, gets exposed to the sun, makes electricity, and that goes right into your home. It's going to go through your inverter, be converted to that alternating current, and then flow right into your nonprofit, your sanctuary. And like using today as an example, the air conditioning is on, these lights are on, we're using all of this AV equipment. So the sun is brightly shining outside, we would be using that energy right now on the spot on our side of the meter, if you will. So the customer side of the meter. The utility wouldn't even know how much we're using. They do make consumption monitors if you wanted to know how much you were using right on the spot. Any surplus, so this is an efficient building and the sun is shining brightly right now. It's feasible that if there were a large solar system or solar array on the roof, we would be overproducing. So any surplus would then flow backwards through your meter and go back onto the grid. So it doesn't get sent far off to, some main hub of the utility. It just goes to the poles and wires right outside along the street. And all of the buildings around here will use it on the spot. Electricity is opportunistic and it goes to the next hand out, if you will. So the next need is where it's going to go. And that's great for building community resilience and for producing local clean power on the spot. So less power is lost by traveling far off. So something really cool happens whenever it flows back through that utility meter. In number 4, you can see that bidirectional meter, and the utility is going to keep track of how many kilowatt hours, how much energy you're sending back to them. And then that excess is going to show up on your bill as a credit. So that is what we call net metering. Here's a really good example of what your electric bill will look like. Electricity used from the grid, so they'll tell you the full amount that you pulled from them, and then they'll tell you what you sent to them, they being your utility company, and then the difference is what you will be charged. So solar is a great investment. Just in the last decade, really, it's dropped over 70% in costs. It's no longer a specialty item or a boutique item. It's definitely not just for the wealthy. It was more difficult for nonprofits to access before the IRA, but in a little bit we'll talk about why now is such an exciting time and why the access to solar has expanded so much in the last year. Some other considerations, some common questions that come up are warranties. There are multiple long-term warranties associated with your solar system. So you're going to have a product warranty, just like if you were to buy, a new HVAC system for your building, you would have a product warranty from, let's say, Carrier. And then you're gonna have a production warranty that guarantees how those panels, those appliances, if you will, are producing for a period of time. So usually about 85% of their rated production over 25 years, which is very long time to be producing at that high of their rated production. And then you're also gonna have an installation warranty from the contractor and the engineer that does your job. So how they engineer the job and connect it and set it up for you. You definitely want to make sure that you have enough insurance. So be talking to your insurance broker about, the added value to the building and making sure that you are upping the insurance to reflect this new level of value that the building will hold. And then you want to be thinking about operations and maintenance packages, and this is something that we will help with as well. Whenever you have a larger commercial size project, these can often come with 1 to 5, maybe even 10-year O&M packages is what we call them. Solar is very long lasting. Even after that 25 years of highly rated warranty, solar doesn't just stop working after that. So it will last for decades to come. So you want to make sure that you're having a new roof for installation, right? So if you know that you're about 5 or 7 years out from needing a re-roof, that is definitely something that you want to be considering or looking at ground mount options. And there are a lot of creative ways to finance for nonprofits, and I'll talk more about those. So we are launching this group that we're calling Ready, Set, Solar for Nonprofits. And this is really a novel pilot. We've done this in a couple other states, in Virginia, and we're also doing it in the DMV area, so DC, Maryland, Virginia, greater area. And this is basically a hand-holding exercise for larger projects, much like we run these solarized campaigns called co-ops for residential projects. So what is it like going solar with a group? Well, if you're with a nonprofit or a house of worship and you're thinking about doing this, you want to make sure that you have the right people in the conversation. So you have leadership buy-in, and it's a big project. This is a big construction project. So you want to make sure that you have a dedicated project lead. What we provide through the group process is a free roof review and project advice and hand-holding and support, as well as solar energy education and tips for financing. We have the project set up to really be 9 weeks until you should be ready to make a decision, a go or no-go decision, if you will. And we have benchmarks set up within that 9 weeks for you to hit in your organization. And then we're also going to have events like this and other ways for you to connect. On the nitty-gritty side, we're going to really help you review proposals and then help with your selection and installation expectations too. And then once you've gone solar, we're going to be helping with follow-up resources on being a solar owner. So this group is open now. We have some laminated handouts that we'll pass around with a QR code, and you'll be getting a follow-up email if you're joining by Zoom with both this presentation and how to join the wait list. So we are having everyone join the wait list, and then we're going to open it up and get people started at the same time. So you're moving forward as a cohort. We are going to have a forum where everybody can connect about the different stages that you're at. So who should join? Nonprofit organizations or CBOs, faith-based organizations and places of worship, state and local government buildings are able to join, preferably on the smaller side. If it is, a convention center, then likely there's resources to hire a private consultant for that. And then public and private schools. So what is this big change that we've been alluding to? And this is something that is just available starting this year, so January 1st of this year. We're waiting on guidance on exactly how to take advantage of this, but it is a go. This is definitely a thing that is happening, and is the ink is dry, if you will. So that change is the investment tax credit being available for nonprofits. This is such a big deal because the investment tax credit has historically only been available to those that have a tax burden or a tax liability. So in the past, nonprofits didn't pay taxes and weren't able to take advantage of this 30% tax credit. So the IRA restored the tax credit to 30%. It had already started to sunset to 26%. So if you hear 26%, nope, we're back up to 30%. And it allows tax-exempt organizations to take it. This is going to be done through a direct pay option. The full 30% will be in effect until 2032, and then it will begin sunsetting again. So the direct pay option is the little bit of guidance that we're waiting on. What form will this be? It's really those in-depth questions that we're waiting on clarity from the Department of Treasury on. But this is a go. You will be able to take 30% and get that as a cash rebate. So we know that that will be 30% of your total project costs as a cash rebate. So we don't know the exact form or if that's going to be annually or quarterly yet, but we can still be excited because 30% of a project is a huge amount. It gets even better. There are specific adders that are available to these commercial projects. And I'm going to go through those now. These are for anything under 1 megawatt. So just take these and remember these. If you hear extra chatter about other things that are required, those are for larger projects over 5 megawatts. So you are not going to be required to meet any specific, other things. This is what is required for the projects that we're talking about, and pretty much every nonprofit is going to be under 1 megawatt. It would be very difficult for you to have electrical needs to get a project that big. So what is available for under 1 megawatt, which is all of us? If your project is located in an energy community, then you can add 10% on to that 30 base. 30 is our base, right? We can add 10% for being located in an energy community. And there are a lot of energy communities throughout Florida. So we have some guidance on what that is. It's going to be a brownfield, anywhere near a retired coal plant, or anywhere where there is a high unemployment rate and more than 1%, but more than 0.1% of the population works in extraction. So they made it a little difficult, but there are maps that you can find online for energy community. One is linked here. When we send this out to everybody, you'll be able to click that link and then look at those maps. And like I said, it covers a lot of Florida. 10% adder for any project that is using the defined minimums for domestic content. That applies to, right now, steel, iron, and everyone is good on this for the first year. So any projects that are starting this year are kind of shoot into that domestic content. And by application or allocation, you can request these additional adders down here. So these last two. 10% for a project located in a low-income community, which is even bigger than the energy community definition, right? Or on a tribal land. Or 20% for a project that is qualified low-income residential building project, so a lot of HUD housing, or qualified low-income economic benefit project. So if you're a food pantry, that applies to you. If you're a domestic violence shelter in a low-income area, that applies to you. If you are in any way serving specifically low-income clientele, then that applies to you. So we're talking about 50% of the project. That is a huge deal. And that is a lot of nonprofits. So for everyone listening, if you know of a food pantry, a homeless shelter, Catholic charities, any of those things in your area, you need to be preaching this to them. There are also a lot of other tax credits that are going to be available to nonprofits. Heat pumps, electrical upgrades. So if you are in the, we're going to talk about this during the group process, but if you are going through that group process, you have an installer come out and give you a quote for what your project would look like, and they say, you're not up to code. I can tell this building is, from 1978. Here's the electrical work you need to be done, that needs to be done so that you can go solar. You can get a tax credit for making those upgrades. And then the Section 179D is also available to nonprofits now. And this is a building retrofit tax credit that says if you make any energy efficiency upgrades, doors, windows, heat pump, all of those things, that results in a 25% reduction in your energy bill, then you can get a tax credit for making those changes. So a lot on the table here. There's also more than $8 billion that's going to go to the state energy office. We do have a state energy office in Florida, and that is going to establish rebate programs for the home efficiency upgrades and home electrification, different new programs that are coming out of the IRA. And then tax credits for EVs are also going to be available to non-residential projects now, to commercial level projects. So nonprofits will be able to take a tax credit for EVs. So if you want to add your own fleet, which, a lot of nonprofits do have cars and need cars or could benefit from them, you can do that. Or for a lot of houses of worship, what that's going to look like is the EV charging infrastructure tax credit. So $1,000 or 30% or up to $1,000 for EV charging. Who wants to see an EV charger at their house of worship? Yes. In financing, there are a lot of different financing options available specifically to nonprofits. So crowdfunding is something that we can even share stories of success that we've seen around our different states. Solar and Energy Loan Fund is a local CDFI in Florida. It is the only green bank that's also a CDFI in the nation. They have already spoken to us and said, yes, we will be doing loans for these projects. We are excited about it. Same with Climate First Bank, which is from here, from St. Pete and Orlando locally. You can take a commercial line of credit. The interest rate on a line of credit, especially for these cost positive upgrades, is usually much lower than market rate. And then there are a lot of different restoring creation or earth stewardship loans available to houses of worship specifically. So I know that the Presbytery, Corps, which is a Methodist arm for disaster relief, has some. So there are different religions and faiths that have specific grants or loans that are available for their members to take advantage of. And that's another thing that we'll be kind of hand-holding through that group. So if you haven't had that laminated handout come around, make sure you're scanning that QR code and getting signed up for the group. And why should you sign up for the group? It's a great value on installation. We're able to kind of do some watchdogging and make sure that nobody is being cheated out of their tax credit. That's something that we're already seeing. Our different entities come in and say, we'll take the tax credit for you. We don't need that anymore. You can take it yourself. So that's the exciting, headline news here. Nonprofits can take it themselves. So great value on installation. You have our support throughout the process. You get to connect with peers that are also going solar. So there's so much knowledge, institutional knowledge, that is kept under wraps. I personally know a Presbyterian church that used a 0% interest loan from the presbytery. So we need, to have each other mentoring one another. So we're going to be building out that forum where that happens. And we'll be bringing in those who have gone on before and are already solarized to come share best practices, what they learned. So being a part of the group doing this. Storytelling for your project, we're able to help on the, the end product, do some storytelling, and you will actually be seeing stories from other churches and houses of worship and nonprofits around the nation as soon as you join, and then you get to become part of a growing solar movement. So I'm going to leave this up here so that you have our email if you have any questions, but really the first next step is to join that wait list. And then we will let you know when we're ready to start everybody off as a group, and you will start through that process. Like I said, it's about 9 weeks. So the first order of business is to join the wait list, and then the second order of business, and you can see the website here for joining, is to start thinking about that leadership buy-in and who's going to be the project lead. So you don't have to know right off the bat if your roof is good to go or where you're going to put the solar. Those are questions that we can work through later on. So now we have time for Q&A. And we have mics that will go around too. So if you just want to slip your hand up or type it in the Q&A box if you're on the Zoom.
So I know we're used to talking about this as a tax credit, and even some of the sides, some said direct pay and some said tax credit. Is it all going to function the same way, or maybe we don't know the answer to this question yet?
That's a great question.
Or is some of it going to be handled different ways? Because, our church doesn't file taxes, so how would a tax, yeah.
Yeah. That's a great question. So the official language is still going to be the investment tax credit. That's the credit that you're taking it through a direct pay option. So to our best guess, this is going to be when you file your 1099, you will be able to get a cash rebate, if you will. So just a cash rebate directly. I personally hope it can happen quarterly because we're talking about large sums of money. But we're not sure if it'll happen quarterly or annually now. We should know in the next couple of weeks. They were aiming to get guidance out by March. We've passed that deadline, but usual for the government. But that's a great question. It will be a direct pay option, which is a cash out. And you can, those first two adders that I talked about that were each 10%, they do stack on that 30%. Those you can claim yourself. The bigger ones that I am serving a low-income client base, or I am specifically in this area, those are by application.
I actually have just a quick clarification on that. Are those, are the adders, so if they're 10%, does that make it 40%, or is it 10% of the 30%?
40%. So 30% is the base that we're going to be working from, and we can get up to 50%.
If your property is being used for multiple purposes, part of it you have a food bank.
Can you repeat his question? We cut out on the mic there.
Okay. Your property is used for multi-purposes. So you're using it for worship for part of it and part of it for food bank or other services. How does that happen if you can claim that extra 10%?
This is a great question, and this is something that, if very complicated, you would want to work with a CPA on, but it really depends on, what the entity is doing those things. So is the house of worship a separate entity from the food bank? If it's all the same, 501c fill in the blank, then you could apply for that application for the low-income service adder. And I think that's a great question, because many houses of worship operate, clothing drives or food pantries or other things from their building. So if it's done under the same nonprofit entity, then that's part of what that nonprofit entity is doing.
Evan, we got a bunch of good questions.
Okay, we're going to take a question from the Zoom Q&A.
Do you know of any project that's gotten a direct check yet?
No one has a check yet, because this is the first year that this has been available. So I imagine we are, almost into May. There's probably some projects that are wrapping up now and waiting on guidance on what form do I fill out to take this. That's why the government had that Q1 deadline that they were trying to make, thinking about, how soon projects would be done. But the good news is we've had our fair share of cynicism, and we have talked to the Department of Energy. It's happening. We're a go to share this today. We're a go for people to count on this. They're just working out the kinks of what form and where.
Another question, are churches in Washington State, does Ready Set Solar support work there?
That's a great question. This is a national tax credit, so this information is applicable across the nation and in the territory of Puerto Rico as well. We can help support on like a one-off basis, but this Ready Set Solar program is specific to Florida right now. If this is a huge success, then we will definitely be building on it. Florida's the guinea pig for the nonprofit Ready Set Solar right now.
We have a Sun member who lives in a homeowners association and with a big community center, and that's a 501c3. Can they go solar through this project?
Yes, as far as we know, any tax-exempt organization is going to be able to utilize this direct pay option.
One last question. Can you talk a bit more about roof sloping?
Absolutely. So, we have personally helped many houses of worship around Florida go solar, and one that I was like, there's no way that this roof can support it. The pitch is, a beautiful A-frame pitch, but it was interior Florida, and it was able to be designed to meet code requirements. So I think it really depends on the rafters and a bunch of different engineering. So you can't rule anything out. But if you know that you specifically have an extremely steep slope, then you might want to, have an internal discussion about ground mount options as well.
Is there an upper limit on project size?
Yes, there is. For this group, we are looking at 1 megawatt AC and under. So 1 megawatt alternating current and under. There are a different set of rules for larger projects. They also get the tax credit, but there's a different set of rules. So if you leave here and you're really jazzed about what you've heard and it sounds really simple, and then somebody else is like, no, you have to do all of these different things, they're most likely talking about the commercial rules for larger projects. So we're talking about all of us, nonprofits, houses of worship, buildings that are, this is a great example, the building that we're in today. So under 1 megawatt.
You mentioned the scale of the 1 megawatt or under would be I mean, is this anything under 50,000 square feet or 30,000 square feet or any kind of ballpark on, I have no idea how much 1 megawatt is.
Enormous.
Okay.
1 megawatt is enormous. I don't think I've ever had anybody reach out to me for even help with a project that size. That would be a very large agricultural farm operation, like thousands of acres.
Okay. The discount of the 30%, that's not just on material of the solar panels, that's also on the install, it's also on the upgrade of your electrical system and the EVs. It's all in cost, right?
Yep, absolutely. So project costs, and then like I called out, there are separate tax credits if you want to piecemeal this. So if you know we need to re-roof, but hey, we also found out that our electrical panel situation needs to be upgraded, you can go ahead and do that because there are specific electrical panel upgrade tax credits.
Another question. For new construction, if you're looking at a commercial building with a flat roof, is it advantageous to look at a pitched roof for solar, or does it operate just as well with wind conditions and all that flat?
Works just as well with a flat roof. Metal roof plus solar is the best combination for sure. If you are installing a flat roof, it's most likely a rubber membrane roof, and you want to be in contact with the contractor doing that in the manufacturer, so maybe GAF, right? They have their own set of, standards for making sure your warranty coincides with your solar install. So a lot of manufacturers for a brand new roof are going to have preferences for the type of racking system that you use. And that's just something to be in communication with them about. That's if it's a brand new roof. And especially for those other types of roof, right? Like a rubber membrane. But for a existing shingle roof or even a shingle re-roof, then it's super straightforward.
I know there's a lot of variables involved, but could you ballpark like a 10,000 square foot office building? What would it cost to solar that building, and then what would be is it 50 years before you get the return on investment? Is it 30 years? I don't know.
Definitely not that long. Great question. So the return on investment is generally 7 to 10 years. Depending on how much electricity you use and how many adders you get, if you get a 50% adder on something like a food pantry with refrigeration, your return on investment is going to be 3 to 5 years. So the more electrical consumption you're able to offset of your own consumption, the more bang for your buck. So any type of refrigeration or a lot of AC or water that's going on, that is going to increase the return on investment for you because you're consuming your own energy without taxes and fees added on. You're not paying for the volatility of natural gas right now. So that's really important to think about. Even if you have like this area that we're in right now, the building that we're in, there are multiple buildings here. So most of the time, if you have maybe like a fellowship hall and then a sanctuary, the sanctuary might be your biggest electrical use, but you need to check those numbers. Where is the most advantageous to put the solar system? So these are all things that we help you consider, and we're going to be walking through in this this group process. And you asked for a ballpark. It's very difficult to ballpark based on what the building is being used for. So it really depends on what electrical use and how much your bill is already.
That estimate is something that you all would help with as we got further into the project.
Yeah, we would definitely, we are going to be doing proposal review, and then we can, give you some simple formulas of what you should be looking at as far as production and offset.
The 7 to 10 year ROI that you mentioned, is that considering tax credits, or is that before tax credits get involved?
That is considering a tax credit, which in this case is a given, right? Because it's a direct pay option.
Last question. Do you have a couple of examples of commercial projects that you all have done here recently?
Yeah, part of this group process is we are going to bring in mentors. So nonprofits that, have already installed solar, how they did it, what financing they used, what their offset is already. And the good thing about having people who have already done this is that they've all done it under worse circumstances, right? They were not able to take the tax credit. So it's only better from wherever they're at. I think there was a question over here.
No question. I just wanted to give a feedback that while we haven't had these bigger projects, it is very commonly understood that a similar size tax credit, 30% for homeowners, brings the return on investment from 15 to 20 down to 7 to 10. And that's a very common, so we don't have exact estimates, but we know that kind of repeatedly over and over again, this is what we see kind of out there on average, is bringing the return on investment down that much to about 7 to 10. So I don't know if that's somewhat helpful, but I think it probably will be very similarly applicable depending on usage.
Yeah, and I was actually using a commercial dental office in my response. So they were pretty high. This was news to me that dental offices use a ton of electricity. I mean, I guess it makes sense when you think about it, but their return on investment was about 4 years. So that's why I went to 3 to 5, depending on how much electricity you're using. And the key, one of the key things too, is to be thinking about when you use that electricity. So, most, thinking again about houses of worship, most of the sanctuary is going to be used during daytime. So it might be beneficial to put it on the sanctuary to be able to eat up that solar right on the spot. Because maybe things happen in the fellowship hall at night and you're just going to be backfeeding the grid the whole time. So these are some of the critical questions that we help you work through and think through.
I have a comment. I'm a Methodist, and recently in a creation care team meeting in a small group of us, somebody mentioned that they knew of a Methodist church that had installed solar, and it turned out to be an evangelism tool. People saw the panels on their roof and came to church and said, y'all are in the right direction and we want to be with you.
Yeah, the Methodist congregation actually has on their Creation Care website 3 reasons why you should go solar. Number 1 is for creation care and earth stewardship. Number 2 is to offset your electricity bill. And then number 3 is for evangelism, to share with your community. So,
I have a question. Churches and other faith organizations and nonprofits, usually, if they're fortunate, have donors, people who are ready to write a check, and we love them. Hello? Okay. With a solar project, this could be a considerable amount of money for that organization. And so I'd like to ask, do we see the installer community ready to have that initial conversation and perhaps wait several months, or hopefully not more, but wait to get started?
that is a great question. So the question is basically about project timeline. These projects are based on just the organizations involved, right? There's more bureaucracy, and the size of the project's going to be 6 to 8 month projects, and they can be up to a year. If you have a 3-phase electrical system and you do need a tier 3 interconnection, so the utility has to come out and they do what's called a work along to make sure everything is plugged in together. Then that can take a while to schedule. So we could be talking about up to a year project. So yes, installers are definitely ready and understand commercial projects take longer. And then to your other point about just having kind of the conversation internally about how to fund it, a lot of people do use like a building fund. And I think one of the storytelling things that we hope to touch on at the end of this group is how to talk about that return. So your $5, for every $5 that was given to this project, what is that producing in electrical costs offset? So I know that that works for me as a donor to nonprofits. Your $5 is going to make $15 in impact, because now I feel like I just gave $15. It's a sale, right? Everybody likes a sale. So it's a way to tell, your members, if you give $5 to this project over the course of 25 years, which is what we commonly call the lifetime of solar, despite it really being 50 years, before your panels are not worth their weight anymore, if you will. There's probably something newer that you could upgrade to. So over the course of that, your impact is maybe $600. Maybe it's a whole, month of our utility bill.
Evan?
Our food,
Just want to make one comment about OUC, Orlando Utilities Commission. They do aggregate net metering, so the multiple buildings on this property on one bill can have net metering for the whole campus, not just one building. I have another question on the online. Can you talk more about EV fleet needs? Is a tax credit, a tax refund for the vehicle as well as the battery and related expenses?
Yes, so it covers the whole vehicle. There is going to be, the EV tax credit is, currently available and can be taken now by non-residential tax credit and nonprofits through the direct pay. So it's 30% of the vehicle cost up to $7,500. And I think we had a question right here too.
we have our food pantries in a leased space across the street. Can we benefit from the extra credit?
So that is something that you would actually need the landlord to be. It has to be the owner of the roof. So the landlord would have to be in on that. However, the same tax credits apply to them, and even better. So commercial property is able to take the tax credit, the adder, and accelerated depreciation of 85%. So it's closer to free. So you should tell your landlord to get on that.
The one question I have is, do the commercial / not-for-profit properties, are they subject then to the net metering?
Absolutely. Yes, so net
all this-
metering applies to everyone, and this is something that gets a little bit more in the weeds, but can be a huge boon to setting off any demand charges, right? So a lot of nonprofits are considered in the commercial class for their utility and are subject to demand charges. And demand charges are usually your highest 15 minutes of electrical usage, and then you get like a fee assessed based on that number. So for most houses of worship, that's going to be, sometime between 11 and noon on any given Sunday or Saturday. So this can help to offset that demand charge and how much is assessed. Question over here, and then any more on the Zoom?
The net metering, does this cover battery storage systems as well? So you could store it for using during prime time?
Yes, so the battery storage tax credit is available to nonprofits as well, and that's even without being tied to solar now. So if you have a community club that doesn't have a good roof for solar, but you wanted to add some resilience for your HOA, then you could just add a battery or two and make like a resilience hub in the middle of your community, which is really awesome. So it does cover battery as well. That's something that we will be working alongside your specific proposal to help you understand, because normally the economic benefit of net metering is greater than the benefit of a battery. Solar is a investment positive return. So it's very difficult to, with consumer protection involved, it's very difficult to end up, losing money on a solar investment if you have someone like us checking over everything. Batteries are an insurance plan, so you are paying money for that. Solar is an investment, you're getting money back. Batteries are insurance that you're purchasing. So they do take away from that investment number a little bit, but they can definitely be worth it if you, have a large congregation and you do some demographic analysis, and maybe you have, this is something that will help you think through, maybe a survey, and you see that, 30% of your population has a health need, and they would benefit from guaranteed refrigeration during a long-term power outage. Those are things that you can kind of start making the case for adding a battery strategically.
Okay, thanks. Can you also elaborate a little further about accelerated depreciation?
So accelerated depreciation is not for nonprofits, that's for commercial. So the question was about a leased food pantry area. So for commercial projects, I've been yelling this from literally the rooftops for years now. The accelerated depreciation under some tax changes that were made under President Trump was 100%. And then you could only take, as a penalty, you could only take 30%, half of the 30% tax credit a few years ago. So it would be 115% of your project could be depreciated and accelerated into year one. Now it's sunsetting, so it's down to 85%, not 100%. And you still have that penalty of half of the tax credit, so we're looking at 85 plus 15%, which gets us back to 100%. So if you have tax liability as a commercial business, then there's definitely a really strong case to be made for going solar on your commercial property, right? If you've been in business, let's say over 5 years, and you're making a bunch of money and owe taxes, and you're a good site for solar, there is literally no reason to not go solar.
Evan?
Yes.
Can you
Question,
talk
please?
about batteries and demand charges and rebates and whether they're good or not?
Yeah, so there are definitely tax credits for the battery as well, 30%. And we talked about this a little bit with adding batteries strategically, because they will eat into your net metering. Instead of sending all of that surplus back to the utility or to the grid, the lines and poles, you will be sending it to your battery and filling up your battery bank and storing it on site. So you're not net metering all of that, you're just storing it for, worst case scenario, right? You can take the 30% tax credit on a battery though, and if it makes sense for resiliency or medical needs, then that's definitely something to look into. And this is a little too in the weeds, so I don't want to get too much into it, but something that we can point to other things on our website. We have a storage guide. Definitely peruse our website. We have a bunch of open source guides. You can use a battery if you are suffering from demand charges, then you can get a battery that's programmable to help offset and deploy your own energy during the time that you're getting hit with a demand charge. So batteries are super techy and very programmable now, and have come leaps and bounds. We used to say, whenever I started 6 years ago now, we used to say batteries aren't super worth it yet. They're going to make a big jump in technology, and that jump has happened. So batteries are, extremely smart technology now. Another question here. And I also wanted to share that, we don't have to figure all of this out today. That's what the group is meant for. And definitely do look at our website. We have so much information up. Just click around, and then you can also go to /IRA, and we've set up an IRA webpage where you can see all of these new tax credits.
It's actually just a comment. I think many houses of worship and community centers and things like that know and recognize and have been, especially if they're in the middle of communities, that you kind of become a de facto emergency shelter in times of disaster. So having the solar and the battery backup is a way that you can provide that that is not on OUC's schedule. That if you have battery backup, as soon as it's sunny again, you will have electricity again, and you can be that shelter and that place for people. But if you have the solar and you don't have battery backup, it's shut down until OUC gets you back online. So I just say that to really recommend to you, especially now, if the batteries have advanced, that's really good news. That really should be a part of your plan. It's worth the extra to tack on, because that benefit of when everything else is down, we live in a state where there's hurricanes. Well, what comes out the day after the hurricane? The sun does. And if you have battery backup, you will have solar, you will have power again, and you'll be able to serve people. That's right, you have the Florida sun, and it comes beating back, right? We know that. So I just wanted to say that, because not everybody may know that with the solar. A lot of people think, well, I've got solar, I'm good, when the power goes out. If you don't have battery backup, you're not. When the power goes out, you also don't have power, because you're connected into the grid.
Any more questions from the Zoom? All right, so everyone is going to be thinking about leadership buy-in, going back and joining the Ready Set Solar for Nonprofits group, and then also thinking about who you can share with, right? So your local government, your local school, if you have school-aged children, just say something to the facilities director, or go to your local school board meeting and ask what their plan is for, both solarizing, and there's a lot of implementation of electric buses coming out as well. So there are so many ways to share this good news, right? So be thinking about who you're going to share with as well. One last question. Yes, so the slide deck is going to be sent to everybody who RSVP'd. We will also post this on this website. So make sure you're going to that website and joining the group, and then looking for the slide deck to be posted there. We're going to send out this whole presentation and post it as well. It'll be on our YouTube, so you can also just send this to people if you want to share that way. And then we have other tools to share. So we have like a social media graphic that you can share that we'll share all of that with you, because really we're a community grassroots effort. So this isn't top down at all. This is us doing this together. So don't keep the good news to yourself. And thanks everybody for coming today, and thanks everybody who joined via Zoom from around the state. Before I came up here, I saw hi from Clearwater, hi from St. Pete. So there are people from around the state on the Zoom as well. Thank you all for your time today.
Hi, this is Mary DuBois with both organizations here today, Solar United Neighbors of Florida and the Interfaith Alliance, Environmental Alliance of Central Florida. Both of organizations we're hosting here today. So thank you so very much for coming. This is such an exciting time for our country. We now have a golden opportunity to help spread the word. There are a lot of people who have not heard about this opportunity, and by hearing it from you, they may decide to learn more and take action. We have a great opportunity here in Florida because of Solar United Neighbors bringing this pilot program here. I'm really excited to see how it rolls out. This very room, in May of 2015, we started the Solar United Neighbors co-op program that was aimed at homeowners. Still going on today. We've heard about, we're on our 81st co-op. Here in Orange County, we're going to be starting June 5th. So don't miss out on that. That's for the homeowners. But today we were talking about a program for nonprofits. So thank you for coming today, and we're in an exciting time, so I'm looking forward to it.